Season 4, Episode 6. I honestly don't know where to begin with this one. Maybe the best way is to start by giving a little background about the person I'll be speaking about. But before I do, I want to remind you of something I've already expressed. This season is personal. In this season, I'm walking with you through my life, showing how Allah's mercy was always present, even when I couldn't fully understand the depth of His mercy. A few years back, maybe around 2015, I met a girl named Jamila. Of course, that is not her real name. I won't disclose her real name out of respect for privacy. Back then, I think she was still under 20 years old. My first memory of her was just a glance. She seemed vibrant, outgoing, full of energy. Maybe it was around her high school years. I didn't know her personally, and honestly, I doubt she even remembers me from that time. She was just passing by quickly, running off to do something for her mother. The second time I saw her was in 2019. By then, she had grown into womanhood. That night, long before I ever started drinking or smoking myself, I received a call from her. She asked if I could pick her up from an address up north. She told me she was with another girl. We'll call her Rima. Even though I was headed to work that night, I made a U-turn and went to pick them up. When I arrived, Rima was in bad shape, throwing up, unable to stand straight. I helped both of them out of that place and made sure they got safely to their next destination. Jamila thanked me, and we went our separate ways. The next time I saw Jamila, she had 2 kids, but she wasn't the same girl I remembered before. Motherhood had changed her, or maybe it was the man she was with. I believe being with the wrong man can damage a woman's psyche. She often drank, maybe to escape reality. She wasn't herself anymore. Looking back now, I know I wasn't truly aware of what was happening around her, or in her. Around this time, things between us fell apart. We weren't okay, and we parted ways. It was mostly because of a man Jamila had been involved with, who I later became friends with. From what her own close friends told me, Jamila used him for money. He had cars. She wrecked them. He had a home. They got evicted because of her. From what I gathered, he was just an easy target for women looking for money. When I knew him, he often vented about her. He told me how much he loved her, how he had even converted to Islam for her. But he also told me how deeply she hurt him. He had lost a lot of weight from the stress. I remember one day, I took him out shopping and bought him new clothes. I took photos of him, showed him how good he looked. He smiled and said, "Wow, I never realized how much weight I've lost. I haven't seen myself in pictures in so long." For a while, we hung out. Then I moved into my own place, and we lost touch. A few months later, he reached out in the middle of the night. Jamila had abused him and kicked him out, and he needed a place to stay. I let him in, gave him a safe place for the night. The next day, Jamila came to pick him up. He went back to her, as he always did. Their relationship was toxic, fueled by alcohol. I believe alcohol was the main reason they fought so much. No matter how bad it got, he always returned to her. Eventually, he left the country and went back to his home. Sometime later, I saw Jamila again. This time, I was at my lowest point in life. I had lost weight, was heavy into drugs, running on nothing but substances. I hung out with her, we drank, and then parted ways again. Months later, I saw her at her new address. By then, I was caught in cycles, drinking, pulling in and out of drugs, and Allah was warning me, pulling at my soul to leave it all behind. I stayed with Jamila for a while. I babysat her kids often. I advised her about the men she was around, told her who was bad for her, told her when people spoke ill about her. But the way she treated me in front of others, like I was less than, began to hurt me deeply. Then came the night that changed everything. Jamila went out with a friend, and I offered to babysit. I told her clearly, I have to be at work at 10, so please be back on time. But around 9:30, her daughters were still awake, asking for their mother. The house was dark. They followed me from room to room as I tried calling her, with no answer. I stepped outside and saw her neighbor's girlfriend, Shay, who was also her friend. I asked her, "Can you watch Jamila's kids for a few minutes? My ride is here for work." She refused. I asked again, but she only got louder, more disrespectful. What broke me was that the kids were old enough to hear it, to understand that someone was saying they weren't wanted. I gave up and walked downhill, searching for Jamila. No sign of her. I left the children safely with an older woman in the community, even told another couple where the kids were, so the message would reach Jamila. I went to work knowing I had done all I could. 2 days later, when I returned, Jamila humiliated me in front of everyone. She accused me of leaving her kids stranded, of betraying her, and she threw in how she once helped me when I was homeless, using my own struggles as a weapon against me. She wouldn't even let me explain myself. I went inside and cried, suffocating under the weight of her lies. And behind it all was Shay, whispering poison, twisting everything against me. It didn't stop there. Soon after, Shay confronted me directly about the babysitting incident. She twisted my words and screamed that I was lying, turning the crowd against me. Her cousin joined in, a woman who already disliked me and who used that moment to pour more gasoline on the fire. That night in Jamila's living room, Shay threatened to fight me. I told her if she touched me, I would call the police. She didn't believe me. She pushed me once, then twice. I dialed the police, but she and her cousin tried to grab my phone. It slipped and fell behind the bed, out of reach. They jumped me. And the worst part was Jamila herself joining in. My face burned, my body bruised. When the police came, I gave them details, but they told me to call back once I had their full names. Later, in a strange twist, Shay was the one who tied the strap of my broken bra. Maybe she felt guilty, maybe not. All I knew was that my face was still hot, the bruises not even settled yet. The next day, my family asked, "We thought they were your friends. You even babysat their kids. What happened?" I had no answer. Later, Shay's cousin threatened me. If I spoke up, they'd put a target on my head. I was afraid, but I still refused to press charges. As much as they hurt me, they were mothers, and I couldn't bear to put them in jail. A couple of weeks later, I overheard Shay and her cousin bragging about the assault. They mocked me for being fat, for not being pretty, and laughed proudly about what they had done. I sat quietly nearby, recording the whole thing. To this day, I still have that recording. After that, I pulled further away. I prayed more, drank less, but still, Jamila lingered in my life. She humiliated me, woke me with buckets of water, stayed tied to abusive men while her kids witnessed it all. I tried to advise her, but it never changed. Her kids, though, they loved me, and maybe they're the reason I kept trying. I fed them, played Qur'an for them, even potty trained the youngest when she had no diapers. I wanted them to feel love, even when their world was chaotic. By the end of 2022, I had a dream that Jamila and I fought. When I woke up that day, I nearly tumbled down the stairs, but something stopped me. Later, I went to visit a family friend, and she warned me, "Don't trust Jamila." I brushed it off. She was homeless. What more could she possibly do to me? That same day, Jamila asked me to hang out. Eventually, a male friend of mine invited me to his home, and I asked Jamila to come along. He was a very private person. When he pulled up to get us, he asked me 3 separate times, "Do you trust her?" The third time, I hesitated, but I said yes. He welcomed us into his home, left alcohol on the table, and reminded us not to let anyone in while he was gone for work. Me and Jamila drank. I drank too heavily and blacked out. The last thing I remember was laying my head on Jamila's lap. Hours later, I woke up, but my head wasn't on her lap anymore. It was on the lap of a stranger, a massive man I had never seen before. He was pushing my head toward him, trying to force me. I refused 3 times, panicking as I realized there were more strangers in the house. "Where is Jamila?" I asked. They said, "She left." That was the moment I knew I had been set up. I searched for her, called her phone, but there was no answer. I asked the strangers to leave, gently telling them this wasn't their house. Slowly they went, except for the large man. He returned, pretending he had forgotten his phone in the basement. Then he grabbed my friend's expensive gaming system, trying to steal it. When I begged him to stop, he pulled out a gun and aimed it at my forehead. I don't know what possessed me in that moment, but I said, "You're going to shoot me? I'm black, just like you." He lowered the gun, then shoved me into a glass table. He raised it again, pressed me to the wall, and then forced me toward the basement door. I opened it, stepped once, and he shoved me down. My body tumbled into darkness. Every stair hit felt like death itself. I landed in a heap, my body trembling, my heart pounding so loud I thought he could hear it. I crawled into the shadows, praying he wouldn't come after me. I stayed there who knows how long, until finally I tried to leave. Feeling around in the dark, I found my phone. No service. The only way was back upstairs. Terrified, I climbed. When I reached the main floor, he was gone. I called my brother first, sobbing, screaming. Jamila set me up to be murdered. I almost died. Then I called the same friend who had warned me earlier that day. I told her the same thing. Jamila invited strangers, then left me to die. Alone in my friend's house, I tried to gather myself. My body was still shaking, but I picked up the broken glass table, set the items back down, trying to make the room look normal. About an hour later, my friend came home. The moment he stepped inside, I could feel the shift. His eyes moved slowly across the room, noticing everything. "How are you?" he asked. I told him I was fine, but I could see him studying me. His eyes scanned the couch, the table, the walls. He bent down, picked up a remote that had fallen, placed it carefully back. He wasn't just cleaning, he was reading the room. Then his eyes froze on a faint red smear on the bathroom wall. "What happened there?" he asked. I stayed silent. It wasn't big, but it was enough. He looked at me again. "What happened to your arm?" I glanced down. Scraped. Ashy from sliding against something during the fall. I said, "Oh, it's nothing." But then his face changed. He realized his gaming console and expensive laptop were gone. His voice rose. Anger, confusion. He stormed upstairs, checked his bedroom, found it locked the way he left it. Then he came back down, furious. "Get ready," he said. "I'll take you home." In the car, he asked me again, "What happened?" I tried to stay quiet, but when he pressed, I started crying. He asked if I had called the police. I said no. He yelled at me, furious that something like this had happened in his home. My tears only fell harder. When he dropped me off, the ride was silent, except for my tears. That night closed the chapter on our friendship. He told me we could never be friends again. I wished I had called them right then, in the middle of everything. But shock kept me frozen. My coworker even thought I was in on it. That cut me deeply, but I understood why it looked that way. The next day, I gathered myself enough to call the police. I reported everything, gave them details about what had happened, and told them what was stolen. But without being able to reach out to my friend anymore, the owner of the house, I couldn't move the investigation forward. He wanted nothing to do with me after what happened. I only kept wishing I had called the police right then that night, but shock had locked me up. By the time I did, the bridge to my friend was already burned. That was another kind of loss. Days passed. I kept calling Jamila, asking for the names of the people she had let in that house. She avoided me, protected their identities, and to this day, she has never revealed them. After the fall down those stairs, I started limping. My right leg ached, my knee throbbed. The damage took months, many long months, to finally heal. Not long after, I saw Scarface. He said, "I'm sorry for what happened to you. I heard they stole from your friend's house. That guy was arrested a few days ago for something else, though." He sounded sincere, yet found my situation funny. Shocked, I asked, "Was the fat guy Sudanese by any chance?" He said yes. Then he told me exactly what they stole, the laptop, the gaming system, and how they bragged afterward, saying they had come up. I couldn't believe it. In that moment, I realized what Allah had done. Back when I told my brother, "Scarface knows him," I hadn't even known why I said it. But now, hearing this confirmation, I knew Allah Himself had placed those words in my mouth. He had taken care of it without Jamila ever having to tell me their names. Fast forward many months later, I finally had my own home. Jamila was still homeless, but I was doing my own thing. I was chasing Islam, though not in the best way. I had started journaling. I was reading often, and I barely went outside. My hijab was my pride. Then one night, around midnight or maybe 1 a.m., there was a knock at my door. I wondered, who could be knocking at this hour? I opened it, and there she was, Jamila. Her voice carried desperation. "Nina, can you please let my 2 kids sleep in your home? Please. We got kicked out. I know me and you don't talk, but please. My children." I could hear the sorrow in her voice. And yes, I took her daughters in. I fed them. I walked with them. I even had days where I let Jamila herself sleep in my home with them. She always reminded me, "Make sure my daughters are good, because they're girls, and they need extra protection." Looking back now, I see the irony. When all her friends turned their backs, when no one wanted her or her kids, Allah's infinite mercy led her back to me, the same woman she had once almost killed. I watched over her daughters many nights. Their little hearts ached for their mother, and I was the one who comforted them. We would draw on the sidewalks with chalk, and those moments were beautiful. I still remember one drawing her daughter made for me. I had her sign it, and I still keep it with me. The youngest didn't even have diapers, because they were always being dragged from place to place. I didn't have the money for diapers either, so I potty trained her myself. I still remember the day she used the toilet like a big girl, her joy, her pride in announcing it. I was so proud of her too. Her mother missed those small moments, and eventually I knew deep inside that the girls deserved a happy home, a space to grow, away from the chaos of their mother's environment. When Jamila was around, I pushed her to return to Islam, but she refused. I encouraged her to dress as the Muslim woman she was, but she would try and fail. From where I stood, it seemed like she was angry at God, blaming him for everything that had gone wrong in her life. She lacked the awareness to see her life with clarity. I would tell her again and again that her children deserved a healthy mother, but those words never reached her. Eventually, I had no choice but to act. I called her brother, who lived nearly 21 hours away, and asked him to come take the girls out of town. By then, too many nights had passed where Jamila showed up at my door, high, banging and bringing toxic energy into my life. I couldn't keep relapsing because of her chaos, so I did it behind her back. I recorded a goodbye video from the girls, something I could give to Jamila later. It was my last act of kindness toward her. I am not perfect, but I know this. I cared for Jamila and her children when no one else did. Even when my own family was angry with me for it, I felt commanded. Like Allah Himself was telling me to help. I can't explain it any other way. I just couldn't say no. As much as I thought this was my trial, I see now it was hers too. Even when my leg was damaged from being shoved down those basement stairs, it still cooked for her daughters. Even when it ached, it still walked side by side with her children. I know you may want this story to end with forgiveness, but it doesn't. It has been nearly 3 years, and I have never forgiven her. She never once apologized for setting me up to be murdered. Maybe this was one of my biggest tests for forgiveness here. And if so, then I know I'm going to fail every time. I've given you many stories with lessons, with healing, with forgiveness, but not this one. Sometimes, not forgiving is justified. With that being said, here are things to take with you from my experiences. 1. My leg was injured from being shoved down those basement stairs. It hurt. It limped. It carried damage that took months to heal. Yet even in that pain, I still stood for Jamila's children. I cooked for them while my body ached. I walked beside them even when each step hurt. That shows something deeper about my life. My love and protection didn't stop when it became inconvenient. I carried others even while wounded myself. That is divine strength, the kind that mirrors how Allah Himself sustains creation, no matter how much it fails Him. My limp became a testimony. Even broken, I stood. 2. I helped Jamila again and again, even after she nearly cost me my life. That wasn't just my compassion, that was Allah's mercy flowing through me. Looking back, I see that by His will, He can even use my pain to protect others, especially children. His mercy doesn't only show up in soft, gentle moments. It also shows up in the hardest trials. It kept me alive. It reminded me that I am still His servant. 3. One of the hardest lessons I had to face was that compassion doesn't always lead to gratitude. I gave Jamila food, shelter, forgiveness, and protection. But she repaid me with betrayal. That truth forced me to see that compassion has to have boundaries. Love without wisdom will drain you, but love guided by Allah will sustain you. This became a mark of maturity in my journey, learning when my mercy was serving Allah and when it was only enabling destruction. 4. So many of my stories end with forgiveness, but this one doesn't, and that in itself became a lesson. Some wounds cut so deep that I can't force my heart to release them, and that's okay. This taught me that forgiveness is a process, not a performance. Some pains need time, prayer, and Allah's will before they can be lifted. Until then, saying I have not forgiven her is its own kind of truth, its own form of healing. 5. The moment I fell into that basement, the moment the gun touched my forehead, by every measure, I shouldn't have survived. But Allah preserved me. He even gave me the words to say to my brother, Scarface knows him, long before I knew the truth myself. That showed me my life is not random. It's protected. I was meant to walk out of that house alive, not because of Jamila, but because Allah's protection is stronger than any human plot. 6. I constantly stepped in for Jamila's children, feeding them, protecting them, potty training the youngest, even playing Qur'an in their ears. Even in the middle of my own struggles, I never let them be invisible. That showed me something about myself. My heart has always been aligned with protection. Even when the adults failed, I could not let the innocent suffer. That instinct in me, to protect those who cannot protect themselves, is more than just a habit. It's a divine calling. Thank you for listening, for walking this path with me. I'll see you in my next episode.